Well, hello, Cheryl. Thank you for your patience. It's good to finally see you. And thank you for joining our class today. Today we're going to go ahead and go over the mammals that are found in our refuge system, primarily at Palmer Hay Flats and at Potter Marsh. We're going to learn a little bit about the different types of mammals that could be found there and their interactions and how their distribution and throughout the wetland in particular, refuge. The whole concept is to really build the background content that you may need for taking students out there to be able to answer their questions and develop activities and inquiry based on the whole ecosystem. So because we're going to talk about the mammals, the plants, how the refuge came together, all of those things, we'll be able to build food chains, food webs, and play active games to help demonstrate some of those concepts while you're out there, and then do some actual inquiry. And as you probably saw by the first PowerPoint presentation that I sent to you, one of the core concepts of place-based learning is actually service learning. What can we do to engage that actually builds equity in the community or into the landscape? So whether that's long-term monitoring or just fostering stewardship of this location, that's significant. So when it comes to your final project, we'll be thinking about ways that continued learning can happen in this place. Okay? So what grade are you teaching, Cheryl? 6th grade? Great. So with your 6th graders, I'm sure that they know the basic characteristics of a mammal, being warm-blooded, covered with fur, has milk, gives live birth, but as you'll see, mammals come in so many different shapes and sizes. And so let's just get started here. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Chris. Mammals that we find in the wetland are going there for a specific purpose. They find themselves in that wetland habitat to fit one of their primary needs, which is food, water, shelter, and space, all in the appropriate arrangement. You'll find through this presentation that some of those mammals just come into the wetland for one of those specific aspects. Others come in for all of them. They can find all of their needs in direct proximity so that they're not going to go a mile for food or a mile for shelter. So that is just wasting energy, and it doesn't help them to be really successful in that atmosphere. So having all of those needs met in proximity makes a difference. The mammals that visit on short term are usually larger, have larger energy sources, and can afford a little bit of traveling and have a larger range overall. Go to the next slide, please. So I just wanted to focus on a few species today. This is a nice list that cover both of the Palmer Hay Flats and Potter Marsh. Beaver, coyote, fox, shrew, voles, mink and or ermine, moose, muskrat, red squirrel, and black bears. And what I'd also like to point out is all of the images for the next few slides all come from the Alaska Wildlife Curriculum Ecology Cards. And we'll talk about how you can get your hands on those right away toward the end. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So most of the animals that are permanent year-round residents really have a great adaptations for that soggy landscape. For example, the beaver. The F, W, S, and P, it means it's getting its food, water, shelter, and space. All of those needs met by being in this wetland. And if you look at that skull, you can see that they have those great chompers that are significant for their food source of willows and other soft tree types. And they also have that space behind their front teeth. You notice that ungulates have the same spot. It's great for stripping off leaves and for carrying their limbs to make their lodges and dams. So that adaptation is significant in that they can block off the water coming into their mouth and use it as a carrying mechanism. Also notice the location of where their nose hole is, their eye orbit, and their ear hole there at the back of the skull. They're all above what you might consider to be waterline because, of course, they have to see their predators coming after them but keep most of their bodies submerged. Of course, that flat tail that we all identify with beaver, it's great for steering in the water, and it's also a great tool for warning your enemies that you're upset with them. I've had that personal experience. And lastly, their webbed feet. It's so indicative of beaver when you're looking for tracks and looking for sign of beaver in the wetland. So by using the behaviors of building a lodge and then also a stockpile nearby the lodge, they're actually creating a protective border around them, sort of their own little island there from predators, and they take advantage of those fast-growing willows. If you think about it, it's really a conducive relationship between the willows needing to be trimmed back and the beaver building and eating. So sometimes that is thrown out of balance for a variety of reasons, and people can start to think it's a problem. They don't want beavers because it's damming up the water, and their nice stream that they built this big house by is jeopardized by it. So that's significant to think about too. Remembering too that their fur is made out of the two parts, the underfur and the guard hairs. And one of the things that I like to point out from our fur kit, if you have a pelt, you can actually spritz it with a little bit of water and watch the water shed away from the rest of its body. And that's one of the ways that beaver, although it slows down during the wintertime, it's active year-round. Okay, can you go to the next one, please? Thank you. So what about moose? They're significantly bigger. You can find moose year-round at Potter Marsh. They're also an herbivore that gets the food, water, shelter, and space. Their physical adaptations that make it conducive for them to be in this area are those split hooves. They're actually very flexible, and they will spread apart to give them more balance. This is also true on rocky terrain or in the snow. So you might not, if you're seeing moose tracks and you're trying to decide, is that a really big moose or not, you might want to think of the medium where the track is being laid, because it could be that it's just really slippery and it's splayed a little bit. They also have that jawbone that I was talking about. The same is true for beaver. It's a similar characteristic. But one thing to note too about every ungulate is that they don't have any bottom front teeth. So that's kind of a problem. They also have, they don't have any top front teeth. They also have a flap up their nose to keep the water out. Sometimes you'll see them getting vegetation underwater, and they will grab it and pull it out. Why doesn't water go up that giant nose? Well, that flap takes over so that they can put their head completely underwater. And those eye orbits and ear holes are up higher as well, but not necessarily for swimming purposes. They are, however, very good swimmers. At the Palmer Hay Flats, and you see this is happening, you can actually witness this right now. These moose, especially the pregnant cows, are coming down in large masses. I've counted as many as 75 on the flats at one time. They're coming down from higher elevations where there's less snow, and of course the the adaptation is, the behavior is that you're going to come together and drop your calves all at the same time in the hopes that the wolf will pick some other calf besides yours. And it's also less difficulty for them getting around, less energy they have to spend, so they come down to the flats. Where at Potter Marsh, you can see moose almost any time of the year. They are gathering there as well. I think I saw 5 last weekend gathering up. So it's getting to be that time. And I don't know about you, but moose are great camouflage. You can see a great big moose in the middle of the road in front of you. You get up there, you think you're going to look at it, and you can't see anything at all. They just disappear onto the landscape. Okay, go ahead to the next slide, please. So some of these species actually have some benefit to the wetland as well. For example, a year-round resident, which is our fox, who's a carnivore, they get their food, water, shelter, and space all from a wetland. They're great camouflage, but one of the ways that they benefit that ecosystem is that they really keep that rodent population in check. Voles and shrews can reproduce like crazy every 21 days or something like that. And so they find a lot of their food source with those smaller rodents, and they keep that balance in check and coyotes do as well, to keep them from overrunning the place. The next slide, please. The other one is an ermine. Now, a lot of people think that mink, marten, and ermine, they get them all kind of mixed up there. Ermine is a little bit bigger than mink, but not as big as some marten that I've seen. And they actually do have the adaptation of changing their color, their fur, to white in the wintertime, except for that black tip at the end of their tail. And that black tip, I thought, what could this possibly be good for? Well, it's at the actual opposite end of their head. So if a predator was going to go after something, they'd probably be aiming at that black tip, which would be less lethal than them getting hit in the head by a predator. They can also find their food, water, shelter, and space from this wetland area. Their long, slender body is really useful for them to get into those tight spots, including snow tunnels that are created by voles and other small mammals in the wetland. They'll actually lay in wait for those voles, come around the corner, and take them out. Voles and shrews. They are super fast, very, very voracious. They'll take down birds. I've seen them charge humans when they've gotten too close to the wood pile. So they might be cute, but they are pretty tough. And again, they also help to keep that population in check. And they're part of that predator-prey situation that continues to feed the ecosystem of a wetland. And in each one of these slides, I've also put their track or sign, because we're going to talk a little bit about how do you identify what mammals, small mammals, might be around in a wetland. Okay, next slide, please. There are some itinerant species, those that don't actually stick around the wetland the whole season long. That black bear is a great example. They just come for that specific time for a specific need. And when bears are just emerging, before there is big food to go after, they're after voles and shrews and sedges. And you'll learn about sedges next week with Catherine. They have a small bit of protein at the base of that plant that helps sustain bears as they're just coming out of their denning season. So that is just enough to keep them going. And of course, it doesn't take a lot of energy to eat a plant, whereas if you had to dig up a ground squirrel or go after a red squirrel, that's a lot of energy. So they are definitely trying to get as much nutrients as they can without expending too much, because they're not getting any other animal protein at this time. Now, black bears can be found in both places, and brown bears have been seen, but they're less likely to hang around those wetlands. They're more likely to be in the forested areas or out on the open. Black bears also come back into the wetland areas in the wintertime to fatten up, because oftentimes they're fish that are in the wetlands as well. Okay. Next slide, please. Other itinerant species include lynx. A lynx could be drawn into a wetland. We've actually seen one at Potter Marsh sitting on top of the beaver lodge. Now, if that isn't an intimidation, I don't know what is. Just sitting there waiting for beaver to come out. We have seen wolves in both locations, but not very often. Also, river otters enter the schema as well, but especially with Potter Marsh, we've got some salt water coming in, so they're less likely to spend a lot of time there, but they are looking for fish resources. And you notice this little picture of a little brown bat. I put a question mark there because the reality is we don't really know what is happening with little brown bats in Alaska. We don't know if they migrate or hibernate over the wintertime. We know that they need water, and they need kind of a covered area, where they do their roosting, because they're insectivores. So we know about those two things, but do they actually stay at the refuges or not? We don't know at this point. Okay, you go to the next slide, please. So I was talking about those ecology cards. I'm going to go ahead and send you this presentation, Cheryl, so that you can just click on the link, and all of these materials are available for you to download for free on the website and start using right away. And one of the things that I started doing is making games out with food webs using these cards. So I'll show you where you can find the actual food chain, the different species that you would need, and I've printed out just the ones that I needed, put them on these, 6-sided boxes, and we play a little game with 2 of them to see who eats whom. And then we add some physical activity with it so that, we're moving, and it's fast-paced, it's a lot of fun. Your 6th graders would probably love to do this. They want to play it over and over to see, how it works out. And I know that you can get these cubes that have sleeves in them, so you could just slide the card in, so you wouldn't have to tape it to the box necessarily. I've been testing this game in Nome and a few other places, and if the teacher's excitement is anything like the students' excitement would be, it's going to be a hit. But you can use different food chains as you're working through the different species. And because it's so fast-paced, they need to respond very quickly. Do they know who is prey, who is predator? Okay. There's also about 14 other different activities and lessons that you can do with these cards to help your students come up to speed on them very quickly. And you'll see the card that has the little hole on it. We actually have sets that are made out of plastic, and they last a very long time. If you're going to take them out to the wetland or anywhere else, you're not going to spoil them. You don't have to reprint them over and over again. So they can be a fine resource to take out there. Have you ever used these cards before? Okay, great. Well, you know what I mean. I'm excited to tell you about something new. There are 270 cards in this set, and it's not just animals. It is the plants, birds, the fish. So you can do many, many different things with these items and employ them in a lot of different ways. And so can your students if you decide to use HyperDocs or Apple Pages or something like that, where they are creating their own lessons. They can bop right onto our website, grab this information, and put it into their document. as a research project or an inquiry or something like that. The next slide, please. Some of the ways that we can identify whether or not a species is in that wetland is by tracking them, by looking for the sign that they're leaving behind. And this is one of the things that we're going to definitely do on the field day, is some actual inquiry to find these mammals and see who is home, essentially. Looking for chew marks, for hair that's left over, feathers, and of course their tracks. So one app that I really like on my phone is called iTrack Lite. It's free, and you can quickly and easily bring up information there if you can access your phone. We also have these tracking cards from Fish and Game. You'll get some of these on our day together. You can ask for a classroom set of 25 of them, and we'll send them to you for free. They're made out of Write in the Rain paper. And the thing I like about them is they fold up to the size of a credit card, and students can stick them in their pocket and keep their hands free so that when they see something, they take a look at it, they can stuff it back in their pocket. And make sure that they're staying safe and keeping their, not necessarily having their noses in the paper, but what's going on around them, and staying safe. Okay, we also have kits that you can check out from Sierra at Fish and Game in Palmer. So there are positive and negative tracks that are made out of latex, and your students can practice identifying those tracks by making this with plaster of Paris. She has all of the instructions and the materials that you need to make that happen. And we'll also demonstrate how you can do this in the field without any of that plastic or latex with you. So if you see a track, it's in a good matrix, we're gonna make one right there out on the wetland. We have also tracking tarps that have different scenarios of tracks on them, and it's the student's job to figure out which species, what was their activity, what were they looking for something to eat, what happened with all of these tracks that are laid out. So it's a great mystery, and you can, if you had a classroom or a group of students, you could have 2 or 3 of them laying out and work as a group to see if they can ferret out what the mystery is with these tracking tarps. Okay, next slide, please. Other related activities, like I mentioned, are predator-prey relationships. Talking about carrying capacity. Anytime we're talking about habitat, for someone, there's going to be limited availability of food, because that's just the ebb and flow of that ecosystem. How many voles can this wetland handle? Well, you have to have enough predators to decipher that. You can also talk about climate change, because that has an impact of how much water is actually in the wetland, and how soon the water is coming in. If it's drowning out some plant species, that's going to be a limiting factor for some species out there. And of course, those ecological relationships, we've got activities that talk about what is the relationship between these two entities. Is one parasitic, where it's killing off completely the other species that it's depending on? Are they mutual situations where they're both benefiting? Is it commensalism, where one is benefiting but the other isn't really affected very much by it? And students can create that inquiry and look at the relationships that are happening in that wetland. When it comes to the service portion of place-based learning, the habitat conditions and surveys are a great opportunity. A couple of hula hoops, and students can start counting how many of whatever species plants might be in a particular area, and look at that over a period of time. You'll be learning about birds and bogs and a couple of other citizen science opportunities through the wetlands, in the coming weeks. And it's just great for students to actually see their data go into a big body of information that's going to have an impact long term. Of course, wildlife viewing is becoming more and more important. You know, Fish and Game is often known for hunting and fishing in particular, but wildlife viewing has become a fast-growing industry, and we're really starting to put more, you know, we've always had an emphasis there, but, you know, a refuge is a great place to just be still and watch it all come to you. And it might be interesting for them to count how many species, different species they see. For example, like a bio-blitz of Palmer hayflats. That would be a great project for people to engage in. And they've done it on this side of town for a couple of years. It's like 24 hours of counting. It's really a lot of fun. And of course, food chains and food webs. Once you become accustomed to those relationships and dependencies, you can't unsee it. You begin to understand, you know, you see all sorts of hair, and then you see all sorts of lynx a couple of years after that, and those two populations directly follow one another. So once students start to see this for themselves, I think it's just an empowering moment for them, and understanding, you know, when Fish and Game sets a limit for a take on hare or ptarmigan or whatever it is, this is why this is happening. These are the trends that we're observing. And there's no reason that the public can't be engaged in that. We invite that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I'll be sending you those sample activities and materials in your mailbox. Next week, we'll be broadcasting from the Wasilla Library. This space won't be available to us at all, so I'm driving out to Wasilla, and I think that Sierra, the regional educator, will be joining us as well. We'll be in the same room that you're in right now. But Catherine Inman will be from Matsu Conservation will be there to talk about plants in the wetland landscape. And we'll begin again at 4:30 as usual. I see that you're taking good notes, and I encourage you to send me your questions and suggestions, and hopefully we'll get some of these bugs worked out so this will work a little bit more smoothly. And is Kitty in your in the valley as well? Yes. Okay. Great. That's awesome. So this presentation is going to be recorded, and so if you want to see it on the archived sites, I'll send you the link to that so you can review it together again if you'd like to. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and I look forward to meeting you directly next week. All right, bye-bye.